I'm sure everyone in here is somewhat familiar with innovation hubs or incubators or those type of spaces. They exist pretty much in every city now. I think the trick is trying to find a city where one doesn't exist. And Volta is generally like that. So my history is I was in Waterloo, a suburban area of about 500,000, 600,000 people now, and multiple cities, Waterloo region, not Waterloo City. There's Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, to say everything correctly. And this type of thing existed in that region and was used to, now there's $1 billion in building contracts that are going out, and they're actually building a city inside of these multiple little towns. And over the next generation, you're going to see a massive transformation in that region. But a lot of it came around these innovation spaces and the innovation hubs. So we looked at what we could do and take something that had started with Volta as being this small little space where founders had come together and founders of tech companies to kind of share their experience, get to know each other. And can we take some of what happened in Waterloo and bring that to Halifax, a city that does exist. There is a downtown here. It's an amazing downtown. But bring that economy, that innovation ecosystem, and those pieces to downtown Halifax, and give people the positive stories that come along with that and the excitement of the companies that do that they live in this space. So enter Volta. We just opened up 6,000 or 60,000 square feet just down the street in the Maritime Centre. Not the prettiest building in town, but the biggest next to the Nova Centre, I believe now. And we're making the best of it by getting it in a lobby level. And when we look at this, we look at innovation not being something that's just about high-tech companies. We're talking about leveraging a growth mindset and adopting methodologies that create opportunities for people. And that's what we look at, what we want to build in our environment, in our space, are people that focus on that. And when we talk about growth mindset, so what I looked at around Waterloo, and I built a creative destruction lab in Toronto as well. Toronto's a completely different beast, and that experience can influence but does not give me a lot of examples that are relevant to a community not like Toronto. And Toronto likes to say it's unique anyway, so it can have it. So I love Toronto. But when we look at the growth mindset, we look at Canada outside of cities like Toronto, where growth has been happening, and people are very excited about that. They don't see that same growth. They don't know of the opportunities. They kind of feel constrained by what's around them. They feel a scarcity, and they're worried about change, and they're worried about what's going to happen next. In Toronto, you kind of get that flip. In Canada, and there's just growth has been happening over time. There's opportunity. You're stuck on the highway. There's all kinds of stuff like that happening. But the really amazing thing that happened in Waterloo, and what had shifted in Waterloo in the time that I was there as a student, and then lived there with my family, and I was there for over 20 years. People started to develop a different perspective of what was going on around the environment. They were no longer afraid of change, and they were embracing it, and they were embracing the opportunities that came along with that. And what really changed is that understanding that things are going to change. There's resilience. You can develop things. You can understand it. Everyone had a role to play in it. People weren't going to be excluded in the community. And of course, there's still that feeling in the community, but there's a lot of work being done to make it an inclusive environment where people feel they have an opportunity to grow and be a part of that. And that's what these environments are for. So growth mindset is pretty simple. I mean, concept in terms of you can get smarter and you can learn and you can do that. You can get higher achievement through spending more time and working harder on things. There's actually science to back a lot of that, where they looked at two twins. It was a recent article. I think it was in Forbes, something like that. But they looked at twins. One of them became an Olympic athlete. The other one did not. They just assumed the one that did not would have the same muscle tissue that gives that high performance athlete the advantage, and they didn't. Identical twins, you should see it in both. And that one that became that athlete developed that through hard work. They weren't the naturally gifted athlete you might identify at 8 years old, but they worked at it and they became that. And I think our brain is a muscle, and our brain needs to work on that as well. And through these environments, through these spaces, that's what we want to promote. So Volta's mission, we want to enhance the entrepreneur and innovation ecosystem in Atlantic Canada. Pretty simple. Looks good on a strategy document. Works for our website. What does it mean? There's three really important things. And a couple years ago, when I started at Volta, I came just over two and a half years ago. we wanted to focus on three things that are important to us, not things we necessarily will do, but need to be in our environment. The foster vibrant and growing base of technology companies that are globally minded and locally based, that's definitely something we should be focused on, but we can't just do on our own. It takes an ecosystem. We went to do that. Our new space now is 33 companies. When I started at Volta, only 33 companies had been in Volta over the 3 years before that. That's an increase, and we want to get up to around 50 companies in our environment and grow that piece here. Support educational institutions as they develop this, is helping them with their programs, getting access to what's going on around Volta, helping with things like the Idea Hub, getting more into the ecosystem in the community, focus on K-12 education. How can we help students understand the opportunities that are here in Nova Scotia and broadly in Atlantic Canada? And then the Innovation District. And again, that definitely takes a huge team of people in different organizations to participate in doing that and understand that we want that environment that exists and most people want in terms of I'm going to work here and live here and everything's kind of within walking distance and I don't have to worry about cars and that type of thing. And that density in terms of creativity helps just in terms, has those collisions occur that you just can't plan. You're not going to book, you're not going to fill your calendar full of these things, but I'm going to be sitting at a table and I'm going to run into somebody who's working on something amazing. I have an example of that, and when I bring folks from here to Waterloo, you just sit in Communitech and don't plan out your day, and you end up with a really full day talking to people that have done crazy stuff and are working on crazy stuff. You don't plan it, it just happens. And that's a success that exists in the Waterloo region that we've already seen, and Volta's only been, grand opening was about a month ago, and it's happening already in our space. It's kind of a natural occurrence when you get the people in the environment. So where we are is down, again, just to give you the illustration, they're expanding the front of the building to come out to the street, which is going to make it a little more modern looking, a little cleaner, and make it more accessible to the public. A really ambitious kind of idea for a building that you wouldn't think necessarily be open to investment. And the owners have done this. There'll be a nice restaurant in there, and we're going to take up a big chunk of that lobby when it's done. Our space is something you'd see just about in any city, not really unique in modern design, beautiful steel case furniture throughout. They were a great partner through that kind of helped make that something that was cost effective for us. And we host events. Our bottom right corner there was one of the first events we had before we were officially open in our lobby. We have 3 floors. The first floor is a public space with rooms that people can book and use for meetings. Second floor are 1 to 5 person companies, and on the other wing we have corporate innovation. ALC was one of the first, Atlantic Lottery Corp was one of the first in there. They have innovation teams that work on things from new products to getting things out in the public. Pretty astonishing thing. The province of Nova Scotia just went in there. We have a few more that are going to be announced soon that'll be in that space. And then the second floor is everything from 10 to 45 person companies. On this side here, there's 2 companies that are around 40 people each. And we use that, then those companies mentor down. In terms of the companies that are large, their executive teams, and others can mentor the teams that are across the hall. Those teams can mentor the teams that are below them as they're just kind of ahead of each other, and we create that ecosystem and that ownership and that connection between people that are in different phases of developing companies. But over the long term, that creates a great group of peers. Where we see the opportunity in Halifax, we talk about oceans. It is an absolutely amazing thing, but we look at it a little broader, talk about the deskless workforce. We look at a lot of the companies in Volta. Most of them are focused on this, on products that help people that don't have desks. This is actually a very large market. It's 2.7 billion people. It's 80% of the workforce that don't have desks. It's not something that the tech world has been really focused on. They like to sell you SaaS software that you use at your desk. But in Halifax and in Atlantic Canada as a whole, the majority of the workforce is deskless. And that creates a great opportunity because it's very accessible, lots of expertise, and we find, again, the companies tend to be focused on that and they're being successful in that space. So I do think that that's something unique to Atlantic Canada, where we just have more on that side of the table, and that's what we focus on. We're really excited by what's going on in Halifax, and I think in Atlantic Canada as a whole, the momentum's building. It's a really exciting time to be here. It kind of feels a lot like Southern Ontario 10, 15 years ago, where you just kind of see things just day after day. There's something to be excited about. And that's kind of the story of Halifax. If you any questions or anything, you want to email me, there's my contact information.